Welcome back. This lecture, after we've discussed and we've talked about the history and evolution of terrorism, and we talked about the 7 different types of terrorism and the different categories of terrorism, I told you that I would share with you a prediction. And this is a prediction I made back in 2010 or so. I created this PowerPoint for it. I wrote a paper about it, and it's been out there. It's been read. It's, a lot of people, and I've been wrong. Every single year I've been wrong, and every year that I am wrong, I am happy. But from my assessment, my analysis of the information from about 10 years ago, I came to this prediction, and I still believe that this will be the next major international act of terrorism in the United States. And yes, it is an attack on our children. They being Al-Qaeda, the Islamic Jihad, the Islamic Muslim terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. I know the presidents past and present tell you that these groups have been destroyed, but I disagree. And they being the Muslim terrorists, any terrorists, not just the Muslim terrorists, but any terrorist organization will always attack that which is important to the target of their attack. Okay, so regardless of whether or not they believe, it's the Muslims or the Christians or the Jews or the Buddhists or the Hindu or the red hand or the black hand or the green hand or whatever terrorist group there is, they always attack that which is important to us. I'm predicting that the next Islamic State terrorist attack against the United States is going to be against our children, specifically against our children in school. Al-Qaeda has shown a history of attacking that which is important to their enemies. Okay. The World Trade Center, resorts around the world, transportation hubs, the attacks in Spain on the train systems and in London on the subway and the buses. The current threat to attack that which is most important to us, most important thing to Americans, are our children. And I believe that the next Islamic State, Islamic sponsored terrorist attack inside the United States is going to be against our children. Has it happened before? Yes, it has. On September 1st, 2004, Shamil Basayev directly managed the Shahid Brigade in Beslan, Russia. They carried out a series of successful militant operations on September 1st, 2004, just after the conclusion of the ceremony marking the new academic year. In Beslan, Russia, 33 terrorists wearing explosive belts stormed the school. School number 1, they took 1,200 children and adults hostage. September 3rd, 2004, gunfire broke out as the Russian military attempted to storm the school and to put a stop to the terrorist attack. 326 people, 156 of them children, have been killed. Over 700 were wounded. And 25 of those wounded would later die in the hospital. So that's 175, 181 people that these children, these terrorists killed. And again, it was in Beslan, North Ossetia, Russia. And that's a picture of Beslan. Most of the victims died when a bomb exploded in a gymnasium and the roof collapsed. Others were shot in the back while attempting to flee. Others were shot and killed while they fought against these 33 terrorists. During the final war, the final shootout, Russian authorities, 26 of the hostage killers were killed. 26 of the 33 were killed. Several, however, the remaining 7 were believed to have escaped. The terrorists learned the puts on its children. That includes the Russians. Okay. We have a pride and a prize for our children in this country. They are our most valuable commodity, more than our gold, more than our silver, more than our capitalism. Our most important commodity is our children. And there's a fight over our children politically in our country between the left and the right over who's going to educate, who's going to bring up, and how our children should be raised. And this one thing is probably the one thing that would unify the entire country into one angry mob of people, is if you attacked our children. Okay, so what lessons were learned from the Beslan massacre? Now, the first thing we learned, according to the experts in the region and the experts in the United States, the Beslan operation was a suicidal jihadist mission from the beginning. They never planned to live through this. They never planned to escape, although 7 did, or it's believed 7 did. It could have been that the 7 were, they were all wearing explosive bombs. Those 7 may have blew themselves up, and they were in little itty bitty pieces all over the gym floor. But they knew that it was a suicidal mission. The negotiations for the release of the hostages was only a front to popularize their goal and to gain attention, to bring the media there. Okay, they waited 3 days before they did this to make sure that every camera, every news agency was there watching them what they do. Okay, the U.S. has not seen a suicide bomber mission within its borders to date. Okay, not like this. We've had the suicide attacks. The 9/11 attacks were a suicide mission, but it wasn't a suicide bomber like we see in Israel all the time, and like we've seen in Afghanistan and Iraq, where our troops, are killed because somebody walks into, it's a poor man's smart bomb. A person with an explosive vest wrapped to their body walks into a crowded room and blows themselves up. We haven't seen that here. And there's no giant chasm to cross. We believed, and historically the United States believed, that we can't be touched by terrorists and we're insulated because of our oceans. Well, we don't have that protection anymore. Because of our fluid borders, people coming in and out of our border at will without being arrested, without being deported, people flying into the country. I'm kind of, COVID has kind of slowed that down a little bit, but I don't see it. The same will be done here in the United States. It just takes time. The criminal justice professionals and the practitioners within the United States have to be correct 100% of the time. These terrorists, they only have to be right once. We can thwart and thwart, and we can stop, and we can interfere, we can delay all day long. But the terrorists only have to get it right once, and they win, or at least they succeed in their mission. We have to be diligent to ensure that it doesn't happen here. But it will, because we have a lack of security in our country. We have a lack of belief that this would happen. I predicted 9/11. in 1999. I wrote a paper stating that this was going to happen, that 9/11 was going to happen, and I got laughed at, and it happened. This will happen here. But every year it doesn't, I'm happy because that means I'm wrong. And as long as I stay wrong, I'm a happy camper. Okay, Osama bin Laden is dead. Yay. He was killed during the President Obama regime, or the President Obama administration. But the question I asked is, would Osama bin Laden or would any leader of an Islamic State terrorist organization order an attack on schools? No, that's what most people say. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't go that far. He hasn't used biological agents on us. He hasn't poisoned the water supply. He hasn't poisoned the food supply. Why would he do that? Why would he, or why would Islamic State want to do that to us? They haven't attacked us since 2001, since 9/11, So the critics, my critics, would say he's not going to do that. They would not attack our children. According to Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman and Todd Rasa at an anti-terrorism conference in Atlanta several years ago, preparations for attacks on American schools is what has been being planned. It will bring an attack on American schools, will bring rivers of blood and a staggering body count. And these plans are already underway within the Islamic world. Okay, within the Islamic terrorist organizations. Has the United States been warned? Yes, we have. We were warned on October 8th, 2004. The United States military in Iraq during a raid discovered 2 computer disks, and these computer disks contain photographs, evacuation plans, academic information from 8 school districts in 6 different states. Okay. They contained all of the information about the emergency management planning for these 8 schools in these 8 school districts in these 6 states. Okay. They know what was, why would they have this if they're not planning it? They're planning this program. Did we thwart them in 2004? Yep. Did it stop it? I don't think so. Fort Myers, Florida, Salem, Oregon, Jones County, Georgia, Rumson and Franklin Township schools, the districts in New Jersey, Birch Run districts in Michigan and California. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's also a school in Texas that was on that list. Okay, so state law enforcement personnel have informed schools the need to increase security during this last election season, during the election season 2012, 2014, because they expected and they thought something would happen then. And if you remember, that's when all of these schools started going to single entry points. They started putting fences around the schools, so you just couldn't walk up into the school itself. They had one single entry. There was only one door that you could go in and out of. And you couldn't venture in. Okay, they were told to be aware of who's in the building at all times, not to be afraid to ask people who they are, why they're there, and what they're doing, to make sure that doors are locked and windows are closed and locked, so that people can't enter the school in other ways. Okay. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies stated that there was no specific threat. They just found this information in Iraq on a computer in Islamic State custody. There were no attacks in 2004. There have been no attacks since 2004. We're now in 2020. 16 years later, there were no attacks. But there's still a threat. looking at, and if you, what I did in '99, I evaluated the writings of Osama bin Laden, and I've done that again. And if you inspect and you read the writings and the missives of Osama bin Laden's statements, especially on children, and his personal fatwas on the subject, targeting U.S. children and innocents in our global society. He has targeted our children. Osama bin Laden and the Islamic State blame Bush 41 and Bush 43, so that's George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, father and son, for the death of millions of Muslim children throughout the world because they withheld vaccines or because whatever they did. They withheld medication. They did not provide services to the Muslim children in Iraq or Iran or throughout the Muslim world. And all of these Muslim children that have died in response, Osama bin Laden placed at the feet of the Bushes. And he stated that if they kill our women and our innocent people, we will kill their women and their innocent people until they stop killing our innocent people. Okay. Osama bin Laden mentions the word child or children 10 times in his fatwas in December 2001, and 24 times in October of 2001. As of 2006, Al-Qaeda has publicly asserted the right, the divine right, established and ordered by Allah himself to kill 2 million American children. This is a fatwa that was sent by Allah and confirmed by Osama bin Laden and other Islamic, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State terrorist groups. They have this obligation and order from God, from Allah, to kill all of these children. They're just not going to disobey their God, are they? What do you think? Okay, so the operations are in stages of preparations. They're going to practice. They're going to do dry runs. They're going to see if there's ways or things that they can learn so that they can get this done right. The 21 terrorists on 9/11 were in the United States for months before they carried out the hijacking of those 4 airplanes and the killing of 3,000 Americans and internationals in the World Trade Center. So, like I said, they have this ruling to kill Americans and their allies, civilians and military, even an individual duty for every Muslim. Okay, and this is what Osama bin Laden said, that it was the individual duty for every Muslim who can, in any country, which it is possible to do, to kill Americans and their allies, their civilians and military. It's an individual duty to liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Okay, it is the grip. Okay, it is. You also have to free the Holy Mosque in Mecca from their grip of Saudi Arabia in order for the armies to move into all the lands of Islam and to defeat those who have been any threatened to any Muslim. Okay. Osama bin Laden continued, there is a saying, if the infidels killed a woman and children on purpose, we shouldn't shy away from treating them the same way to stop them from doing it again. Allah ordered us in this religion to purify Muslim lands of all non-believers. After World War II, the Americans became more aggressive and more oppressive, especially in the Muslim world. American history does not distinguish between civilians and military, not even women and children. They are the ones who used these bombs against Nagasaki. Can these bombs distinguish between infants and the military? America does not have a religion that will prevent it from destroying all people, and we must fight and kill Americans when we see them. So why would he target schools? Again, first, because of our values. We value our children as our most important commodity. Okay. Killing hundreds of them would significantly boost Islamic morale and lower that of the Americans. What it would do is it would piss us off, and it would make us angry, but it would lower our morale, and it would absolutely devastate us if several schools across the country were to be attacked and the kids and the children in those schools were killed. We would want revenge, and it would destroy everything that we as Americans stand for. Two, our lack of preparation within our police agencies. Our police agencies are not used to this kind of activity. Our police officers are not trained for this. Our police agencies are trained to restore order after a DWI or a drug bust, or we're not even, our police officers aren't even capably trained or supported to fight against the riots that have been going through this country for the last summer. How do you expect us as law enforcement officers to be able to defend against this kind of terrorist attack? Okay. And this quote is, we deal with acts of criminal nature. Terrorism, and this prediction that I have, is an act of war. Okay? Because our laws, we depend on the military to fight our wars, and our military is not allowed to operate on U.S. soil. Okay? So we can't do this. And what would it show? And what would it prove if we put military in all of our schools to protect our children against a threat that might never come? And I hope to God that it never comes. But, or maybe I should be hoping to Allah that it never comes. It's coming. And our cops are not trained to deal with this. Okay. Any place that has given Islamic terrorists trouble, any place that has given into the needs or the demands historically, they've gone after the children. They have targeted the children. When Russia was giving a hard time to the Chechen rebels, they went after the kids. Okay. The Harabakam, the terrorists in Africa, they were having problems. What do? They went and kidnapped all of those girls from that girls' school. Okay. They target children because they're the most important things. Girls on their way from school have been beheaded. Children have been shot, mutilated, raped, burned alive, just because they're girls, just because they're children. They've been targeted because Western ideology and Western thought places a high value on our children. So how do we know they're coming? Well, they told us they would. Dress rehearsal for what the terrorists plan to do to us has already taken place. It was at Beslan. It has also been in other places. There have been several school bus related incidents involving Middle Eastern looking males that raise suspicion of terrorist activity. These include surprise boarding of school buses in Florida by two men in trench coats who may have been on a canvassing mission. They just got on the school bus. Okay? And then the school bus driver drove them to the school. Okay, an attempt in New York State by an Arab man to obtain a job as a school bus driver had fraudulent Social Security documents. He was not who he said he was, and he could not, his identification could not be verified to work at the school as a bus driver. On March 18th, 2006, the FBI released a statement to the media after informing state and local officials advising extremists are driving school buses and they're stealing school buses. The Associated Press reported in 2006 that members of the unarmed extremist groups have succeeded in gaining Class B driver's licenses so that they could drive school buses. This is what they did on 9/11. They went and got pilot's licenses to learn how to fly. And they got these licenses. Then they went and hijacked these airplanes. And then they flew these airplanes into buildings because they had the knowledge and the experience. And they were taught by Americans how to fly airplanes. The purchased school buses, police cruisers, ambulances, and large trucks have been recorded to be bought by Islamic companies and Islamic individuals. Why would they need them? 2 Saudi men were arrested, and I know this was Friday, but this was back in 2010, after they boarded a school bus and rode it to Wharton High School in New Tampa, Florida. The students on the bus became alarmed, as did the bus driver, who called ahead, and the cops were waiting at the school. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department met the bus. They detained the men. No one was injured. Nothing out of line occurred. The individuals said that they thought it was a public school bus, it was a public bus, and they were just trying to ride a bus to another location. August 27th, 2007, there were 17 large yellow school buses were stolen from the bus barn in Houston, Texas. And there was a lot of talk about these buses being brought to Mexico, and there was no concern of a threat and no concern to the schools that should be raised, because these school buses were stolen, they were brought to Mexico, and now they're being used by Mexican school districts to transport kids to schools in Mexico. The FBI, state, and local officials stressed to parents that there is no threat to our children. Everybody keeps saying, there's no threat to our children. We don't have to worry about it. There's no terrorists. What terrorists? It's just a myth. It's a philosophy. You don't have to worry about it. It will never happen here. I don't know what that accent was. You guys just figure it out yourself. Floor plans of a half a dozen schools in Virginia, Texas, and New Jersey have been recovered from terrorists' hands in Iraq in July of 2007. They have our floor. They are planning to do this. They want to make this attack. They just have to, they waited 10 years, 15 years before they blew up the World Trade Center. The first attack on the World Trade Center in the 90s, or in the early 90s, they failed. They came back in 2001 and did it again. So what are these terrorists likely to do? So terrorist cells of 4 or 5 operatives will strike simultaneously between 4 and 100 different schools across the country. These schools are going to be middle schools, and they are going to be outside of the cities where they have effective SWAT teams. Okay, so you're going to pick middle school children because the girls are going to be old enough to rape, the boys won't be old enough to fight back. Targets will be in the states with no concealed carry laws. Okay, they're going to be in areas where there is no identifiable hunting culture. And they're going to be in communities where the police do not have a SWAT team. Okay. Rural areas are going to be favored, 30 to 45 minutes away from a major city with a real SWAT team. Again, where there is no real hunting culture. So he's not going to come to Texas. Or I wouldn't think they would come to Texas, although they have floor plans of schools. Maybe in the Houston, Austin area, Beaumont. I don't know, maybe, and where a lot of liberals live, where there's not this gun culture. They're not coming out here to Odessa to take over the schools in Odessa because everybody out here has a gun. And we won't wait for a SWAT team. We won't wait for the cops. If we find out that terrorists have taken over a Robert E. Lee Middle School, we're going there and we'll go kill them all. That's plain and simple. So they're going to, and they know that, you know, once news gets out that these terrorists have taken over these schools, um, the families are going to show up, and they're going to do whatever they can to um, protect them. Pictures of the dead. I know we're not supposed to do that. Pictures of the dead. Okay, the attackers will mow down every kid and teacher they see. As they move in to seize the school, they'll collect all the children into a common area like a cafeteria or a gymnasium. Those that fight back will die. They will make sure that all the doors are locked and there's no entry points. They'll set up booby traps. They'll set up bombs throughout the buildings, and then they will start their rape and murder. They'll throw out the bodies of the dead like they did in Russia to antagonize us as we're going through. And they'll keep telling us that we will, you know, if you come in, we're going to kill everybody. Well, they are going to do their best. All of these police cars and ambulances and school buses that have been stolen and have been bought out of a resale, you know, once the cops finish with a vehicle, they sell it. And once a vehicle gets 200,000 miles or whatever the number is, they sell it. Once an ambulance gets so many miles on it or it starts having mechanical problems, they sell it. And they sell it to anybody. There's no check on who it is. So all of these vehicles are being sold to who knows what. Well, they're going to end up in the response area of the school. Okay, so the school can and will, you know, notify, and all the people will show up. And then once all the people show up and they're screaming and they're wanting to get into the school, they're going to start blowing up these emergency vehicles, because the people showing up aren't going to think about an emergency vehicle being at a terrorist kidnapping scene. They're going to expect those vehicles to be there. They're not going to pay attention to what the painting is. They're going to see it's a cop. It's going to say police. It's going to have a light bar. It's going to be an ambulance. It's going to have a light bar. And these vehicles are going to be filled with explosives. And when a lot of people show up and the media is there to watch it, they're going to blow them up, killing all kinds of people in the parking lot. In all, 100 to 300 children could be slaughtered in the first strike per school. And that is before they even go into the days of negotiations and the fight and the lockdown. Terrorists are capable of this, are already embedded in our communities. They're already all over the United States. They are already training here in the United States. There's been several instances with Glenn Beck and on CNN and MSNBC where they've talked about Islamic State terrorist groups training inside the United States. They're already here. They just have to act. More will probably gain entry through Mexico, through Southern California. It's probably a prime target, up through Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, but primarily through California because of the liberal mindset that we find in California. So what do some of the specialists say about it? The Texas Education Board cannot say that this attack will ever happen. 95% of the school-based police officers feel that their respective schools are vulnerable to a terrorist attack, and they, 32% of them, describe the vulnerability as being very vulnerable, and that if somebody wanted to attack the school, they would and they could. And this is evidenced by all the school shootings that we see. The school shootings continue. Okay, you know, the lone wolf school shooter is, you know, no different than a terrorist group. You know, they're still gaining access into the school. 79% of the officers in this study reported and believed that their school was not prepared to respond to a terrorist attack in their school, okay, or to an active shooter. 33% of the school resource officers reported that their opportunity to attend specialized training for active shooter training has decreased since 9/11. Even though we have all of these school shootings and we have Lieutenant Colonel Grossman and we've got other groups out there training about this very event, very few officers are actually getting the training they believe that they need. 66% of the school resource officers stated that there has been training opportunities, but they've not been able to attend, even though they have demonstrated the specific need, because it's expensive. Okay, we're defunding the police. There's a call to defund the police. What do you think is going to be defunded? What do you think they're going to stop paying for? Do you think they're going to stop paying for cops on the street? Or do you think they're going to stop paying for training? I think they're going to stop paying for training. And the first thing that they're going to stop is the active shooter training and the counterterrorism training, because that's the military's job. That's not the police's job. It's not a cop's job to do that. That's cop's job is to hold your hand and to get the cat out of the tree. No, that's the fire department. I'm sorry. To help the little old lady cross the street, and to write parking tickets and speeding tickets and arrest people for DWI. You know, cops are not supposed to be, you know, they're supposed to be social workers. They're not supposed to be enforcement officers. So they're not getting this training to protect us from these kinds of threats. 77% of these officers stated that their teachers, administrators, and support staff in their schools have not received any terrorism training. I have been in higher education. I have been teaching since 2005, and I have never had a school-sponsored training event on an active shooter or an active terrorist attack. So I can support that claim. You know, I've been doing this for 15 years. For 15 years, I've been teaching. And not once have I had an active shooter training. You know, beyond the order. Well, if there's an active shooter, go lock your door and hide under your desk. Yeah, we did that back in the 50s too, to hide from the nuclear bomb. Like hiding under our desk is going to protect us. I don't think so. I think that we need to have an active training program at all levels, not just the middle schools, or specifically, or especially the middle schools, but at all levels, we need to have a training program to train faculty, staff, and law enforcement officers on how to combat an active shooter or a terrorist attack. 16% of the officers surveyed stated that they have received support for preparedness from the United States Department of Education. Only 16%. So this isn't a federal issue either. And again, this information is about 10 years old. But did you see anything change during the Obama presidency? I don't think so. Have we seen anything change during the Trump administration? I don't think so. And I keep showing these pictures because these pictures they hurt your heart, watching all these kids and looking at all of these kids that are dead and hurt, and maimed, and injured. Because that's where the target is. The next major terrorist attack against this country committed by the Islamic Jihad and the Islamic State is going to be against our children. So Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman came up with the 4 Ds of prevention. And you know, these Ds of prevention are very important. And he stated, Dave Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel Grossman said, if we're not trying to prepare for and thwart the terrorist threat to our schools and to our children, we are in effect conceding defeat and surrendering without a battle to those who would want to obliterate us. I'm not the only one who has this prediction. Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Grossman thinks that if we're not ready and willing to fight for our children, they're going to come kill our children. We have seen this expressed in practice with all of our school shootings. The cumulative effect of a lot of the seemingly small countermeasures effectively applied on a large scale by individual officers can have a powerful impact, and it can actually protect our children. It can save our children. And that's a picture of Lieutenant Colonel Grossman. I'm going to have to send him an email because letting him know that I've created this and he's part of this lecture. The first mission that we have to overcome, before we get to the D's, we have to overcome the denial. Okay, we have to overcome the idea or the thought that this won't happen here. U.S. schools continue to take extensive measures to guard students against the threat of fire. We have fire drills, we have alarms, we have sprinkler systems, we have building codes. We practice, even here at the university, we have fire drills once a semester. I'm in the middle of whatever I'm doing and I have to stop so I can go outside and wait for the fire department to show up, so the fire department can walk through the building so that they will know, how to fight a fire. We don't do this for active shooters. We don't do this for terrorist attacks. We ignore it. We have this belief, this idea that this will never happen to us. Beslan will never happen here, so we don't train for it. Okay, there has not been a single child killed in a fire in the United States in the last 45, 50 years, in the last 25 years. We haven't had it. We have not had a child die in a school fire, and yet we have fire drills. How many kids have died in active shooter events? In the last, well, none this year because we haven't had school, but in the last 10 years, how many? And we don't train for this. We don't prepare for this. Okay. 200, actually. 200 deaths have occurred from school violence, active shooters, and other non-terrorist offenders over the last 12 years, not counting 2020. Islamic fundamentalists are believed to be plotting attacks that can claim hundreds of lives in a single blow on a single day. And what do we do about it? Nothing, because we don't believe that it's going to happen, because we are in denial. We have to get over this denial. We have to get over this thought. We have to change this thought. We have to remember that this picture can happen here. So the first D is deter. An armed police presence in a school can provide a strong deterrence. We need school resource officers in the schools, patrolling the schools, and not afraid to respond like we saw in Florida a few years ago. Terrorists are willing to die, but we're not. And they desperately don't want to die for nothing. And they seriously don't want to die without a body count. But are we willing to die? Are we willing to die? And are we willing to put our lives on the line to protect those that we serve? As a teacher, as a police officer, as we have a responsibility. Are we willing to make our beliefs and our willingness to fight to the death for our children known to the terrorists? Squelching would-be attackers. Some Israeli schools deploy police at squad level, not just a single cop. They put a squad. They put 5 or 6 cops in a school, and they have armed guards that accompanying all class field trips. Okay. They have armed volunteers. They have armed officers. They have armed teachers to make sure that their students are protected when they go out to Hebron, or when they go to the Western Wall, or they go to wherever they go to the Golan, to the Sea of Galilee. Kids are looked over and they're watched over, not just by caring adults, but by caring adults that have the power to kill any threat. We don't see that here in the United States. Having unarmed security in and around schools is pointless. It's also ethically derelict. You don't give someone the responsibility for saving human lives and then not give them the tools to save that human life. You wouldn't give a firefighter a hat, a uniform, and a badge, and not give him a hose, and not give him any water, and expect him to go put out a fire. Cops are armed so that they can protect life. And sometimes they have to protect life by taking life. And that is what the gun is for. Should teachers be armed? At least 2 states, Utah and New Hampshire, and now Texas, authorize concealed carry permits in schools. And according to Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, the Federal Safe School Act allows teachers to carry firearms. I carry. I know that other teachers in this school carry. Carry because we value the children that we teach. And this should be something that is well known across the country, that not just our cops are carrying weapons, our teachers are carrying weapons. And if you threaten our kids, our students, our children, we will take you out. That's a deterrent factor, isn't it? 1 or 2 armed teachers in a school can make a difference. Colonel Grossman said that it'll make a difference, but the given American mindset, we have to push this envelope very gently. And I don't know if I'm pushing it gently, because nobody wants schools and guns. Most schools are zero gun tolerance. They're no gun zone. You get caught with a gun on a school campus and you're going to prison. I carry, but it has to be concealed. If my gun becomes unconcealed on campus, I can go to prison. So if I unconceal my weapon, it better be for a damn good reason, because I'm not going to prison for nobody. The second D is to detect. You want to be able to detect a terrorist attack before it starts. You want to make sure that it doesn't start. Officers being suspicious is what cops are supposed to do. Okay. It's end up being called racial profiling. But if somebody is someplace they don't belong, or they don't look like they belong, should you approach them, or should you say, I don't want to get tagged for racial profiling. I'm not going to go over there, and I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to ask him what he's doing. Okay. The well-positioned cops interrupt attack plans before they even start. Being suspicious of people that you don't recognize is a way to prevent a crime. Good criminal patrol procedures on traffic stops is a way to stop that. Ask probing questions. Be alert. Ask for contradictions, or look for contradictions or inconsistencies, rationalities in their answers. Ask questions, and it irritates me. Cop pulls me over and asks me for my driver's license. What's your address? Well, it's right there on my driver's license. Well, they want to make sure that you know what's the address on the driver's license. Is this still your address? What, and so on and so forth. Where are you going? What are you doing? These probing questions seem pointless, and they're none of the cops' business. But they need to. That's part of good patrol work. It's part of being a good cop, because you're going to look for things. I remember I got pulled over one day I was in rural Nolan County, and I was rolling into this town. I didn't see the speed limit change and drop. So this cop pulled me over, and he goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Sweetwater." He goes, "What are you doing?" "Going to Sweetwater." "I'm going to get my truck." And I was in my truck. I was driving a truck. And he looked at me and he goes, "What's this?" I go, "This is my wife's truck. I'm going to go get my truck. It's here at the shop, if it's any of your business." "Well, it's not, but I just wanted to know." Now, there are questions that they ask. If people are unduly nervous, or they're twitchy, or they're suspicious, they have behavior or other indicators that suggest deceitfulness or guilty behavior, you can extend that stop and you can talk to them more. Because you do have to be able to articulate this suspicious behavior in order to justify what you're doing. But if they can't come up with answers, their answers are choppy, or they're uncomfortable. And yes, getting pulled over by a cop is uncomfortable for everybody. Um, and with this most recent war on cops, it just puts everybody a little bit more on edge. The people that are being pulled over by the cops think that the cop's going to kill them. The cops think that the person they pulled over is going to kill them. Everybody's worried that they're going to get hurt or injured by the other. So this makes the detection all that harder to come about and go through. You want to watch for signs of static or mobile surveillance of potential targets. Are people hanging around places too long? Are they just sitting there watching things? Are they sitting across the street just watching? And one of the things when I was in the military, especially when I was in Iraq, one of the things that we did when we were watching the fence line, if there was anybody standing outside the fence just watching what was going on inside the fence for too long, we'd go approach. We did the same thing when I was working in the prison system. If somebody hung out around the prison too long, we went and we confronted them. "What are you doing here? Why are you here? What are you doing?" And we'd ask them 9 or 10 times, "What are you doing here?" Looking for answers. Why are you hanging out on the fence line of a prison? Are you trying to help somebody escape? Are you trying to break in? Are you trying to do something that will get yourself killed? You want to watch for these signs where people are surveilling a potential target. Terrorists will always conduct reconnaissance, which they may involve photography, videotaping a prospective terrorist site. They practice. They're meticulous. They get all the information that they can get so that they can successfully complete their attack. Your job is to detect that behavior and that information, and then to go to the third D, which is to deter. Don't limit your suspicions just to persons who fit some stereotype. And we've had the American Jihad, we've had the American Al-Qaeda, we've had the American terrorists that have joined the Islamic State that look like me, they look like you, they're of all the races, they're of all heights, they're of all religious backgrounds, but they convert to Islam. There are terrorists who are blonde hair, blue eye. There are Muslim terrorists who are blonde hair, blue eye. There are Muslim terrorists that are black, African American, that are Hispanic, that have green eyes, that are Asian. Don't let a race or a racial profile limit your suspicions to people that are doing stuff suspiciously, because the Islamic State has infiltrated all of our society. Inform schools to report any calls from people inquiring about security. And what kind of security do you have? I did this at the World War II Museum the other day. I asked them if I was allowed to carry my firearm in their museum. I'm asking about security. Okay, is that going to raise their awareness when I show up? Are they going to look at me twice? Are they going to wonder why I'm carrying a firearm? I don't know. But you need to inform the schools. Okay, and the schools need to inform their resource officers if they think that there's a threat coming. Someone claiming to be a concerned parent wanting to know if there were any armed officers on the premise could in fact be an operative gauging the vulnerability of the location. Now, do you have any resource officers? My child, Joseph Smith, is having problems in school and I need your resource officer to go get him. Well, we don't have any resource officers. We've got a student worker here. He'll go and get your child and we'll meet you here at the office. Check that out. There's no resource officers. There's no threat. We can go take over this school. Anytime terrorists bounce off a hard target is a chance to catch them. Every time that they're deterred, and the security that's been set forth by the school to deter them is a time to catch them and to prevent them from occurring. Putting cops on the streets, putting cops in our schools is a good thing. Defunding our police so that they can't do that is a bad thing. And it opens our country for a terrorist attack because our cops can't do their job. 3, delay. Okay, so if terrorists do strike, one man or one woman an effective firearm from behind the cover of a desk inside of a school can hold off a group of attackers for 5 to 10 minutes. I have 13 rounds in my firearm. If I use them wisely, I can hold off a group of attackers for a little while. The guy in the office over there, I think he carries 15 rounds. The guy over there carries another 10 rounds, I think he said. So 3 of us could defend this hallway or this wing of this building until police got there. The first hint of trouble, teachers and children should activate a pre-planned and practiced plan. There's a 3-step lockdown model. Shelter in place. Get them away from windows, get them away from doors, move them away from where the violence would come from. Okay, because this violence could cause mesmerizing and paralyzing and will cause people to freeze. So you take these children and you move them into the farthest corner of the room until help comes. Okay, you block things, you block the doors, you put desks, you put things in front of the way so that they can't get into the room. You lock the door. You put things between you and the attacker. Or if you've got advance notice, we're hearing gunshots from over there. There's another secure location where we can all gather and we can go to that will keep the bad guys out until the good guys show up. Okay. Move again. If you have reason to feel that your spot is threatened, move, run, hide. Okay. Keep hiding. Lockdown does not mean stay and die. Lockdown means hide. At a very last resort, a teacher would need the courage to go towards an actor and towards an attacker. That's a last resort. A very last resort is for you as a teacher or a staff member to go on the attack. Your job is to protect your students and get your students away from harm. You have the firearm in case you need to use it. Okay. As long as you hide and run and hide, do that until you can get everybody out of harm's way. If it gets to the point to where you're face to face with the attacker, you pull your firearm and you eliminate that effect. An active shooter broke the window out of a classroom door, reached through the door, unlocked the door, walked into the door, and killed everybody in the room. That happened at Virginia Tech. So hiding and hunkering down and hiding out behind a locked door is not always going to help you. Teachers and students just waited. You know, a teacher could have grabbed a chair and attacked his hand as he stuck it through the door. Possibly would have delayed or deterred a fatal assault. I know the classrooms I teach in and my office is a solid door. There's no windows on it anymore. But I've been to some high schools and I've been to, you know, middle schools. They still have windows in their doors. Okay? If you're hiding in the door, all I got to do is break the window. I can open the door, and then I can, as an attacker, I can kill everybody. And any attacker could do that. So you need to remodel your schools like this school, and all the doors become solid doors, and take the windows out of them. Plans on paper mean nothing. Again, plans on paper mean nothing. You have to practice. You have to rehearse anti-terrorist scenarios. What are you going to do with an active shooter? An active shooter is just another terrorist. Okay, it's just another terrorist, and we know this is going to happen. Principals have been fired for not doing fire drills, and yet nothing goes on, and nothing is said about active shooter drills, active shooter firing drills, active terrorist activities. This isn't happening in our schools across the country. Okay. A principal will get fired for not having a fire drill, but we don't have active shooter drills. The fourth D is destroy. It is the last resort. As a responding officer or as a teacher in the school who is armed, you have to be fully prepared mentally and physically to use deadly force. And I know in a time in a world where we're talking about decreasing the use of deadly force, I am talking about increasing the use of deadly force. You have to be willing to stop the threat. It is your job to put a chunk of steel in your fist and I quote, kill the sons of bitches who are coming to kill your kids. Whether you're a cop or you're a teacher or you're a parent, you have to be willing to destroy and kill them. This is a fight that you want to take from the very beginning. Don't wait thinking that you'll fight later. Granted, I know back during the deter and the delay, teachers are keeping kids out of the way. If it comes to the last resort and you're a cop, you have to take that fight. You have to make sure that you're willing to kill the person who is trying to kill your children. Okay. Every minute that the Russians waited to move in, the harder it got to take over. Every minute that the Russians hesitated, they lost another life. If you hesitate in responding, you'll die with a bullet in the back of your children. That's a horrible quote from Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, isn't it? If you hesitate in responding, you will die with a bullet in the back of your head in front of your children. They are our kids. They are our children. What are you willing to do to protect them? Those are my sources, my resources. I do want to thank you for your time, and I will see you again in my next episode.